tutorial from Modern Viking. Today I will show you how to make Viking knit chain. It's found in a number of graves and hoards from the period and suits about the level of somebody who's around Jarl status. It's fairly easy to do with fairly limited tools and materials, and the tools that are less common you can find relatively easily on the internet, or you can make yourself. So let's get started. I'll show you what tools and materials you need. As with any DIY project, safety first. The ends of the wire can get fairly sharp, so it's a good idea to wear safety glasses and maybe gloves if you're worried about cutting your hands. So the tools you'll need, the most important ones are a method of cutting the wire. Right now I'm using aviation snips, but you could also use the cutting part of a multi-tool or little side cutters. The aviation snips are just ridiculously overkill for the gauge of wire. The second thing is something to knit over. Some people like to use the end of a Sharpie. I prefer to actually use a drumstick, but anything that's around finger thickness with a rounded end and the length that you want it to be. I prefer extra length so I can grip it a little easier. So that I don't have to worry about such a fiddly object. The third most important thing is a draw plate. You can either buy one. They're available on Amazon and at any craft supply store that has jewelry making supplies. This one, the plastic is a little tougher than the wood, and it has the sizes of the holes on it. But you can easily make one out of wood just using different sized drill bits in a piece of hardwood. So either way is fine. The other things you'll need are a pokey object to basically just pry the loops of the wire apart, because sometimes you can't slide the wire through the hole, so you have to actually open the hole a little bit to get the wire to go through. So these things are all good. The end of a small screwdriver, an awl, or if you have them, scrolling pliers, you can just use the tip to sort of open the holes. The last thing that might come in handy is a pocket knife, fairly sharp, because a dull knife is more dangerous. Because if you're like me and you're using recycled wire, you may have to strip the sheathing off of the cabling. This is a piece of just multi-strand cord wire, copper. Now the materials you'll need will be a small wire, a roll of wire of this gauge. It's between 22 and 26 gauge works the best. Anything smaller than that is too delicate and will actually crush. And anything bigger, it's very hard to get a good grip on it to actually pull it through because it's so stiff. The other thing that you'll need is a thicker wire to do the end caps. And I usually use Romex, just electrical wire that's had the sheathing all pulled off of it. And I believe it's about 14 gauge. This is 18 gauge, available at craft stores and hardware stores, and it will also work basically anything between 18 gauge and 12 gauge if you feel like making it that bulky and stiff. But 18 gauge will make it a little more delicate. So I am going to cut the sheathing off of this wire and get back to you. The reason I'm not doing it on camera is I do it in a little bit of a way that I wouldn't want anybody to pick up my bad habits. I find the length of the wire that you should use is about double from armpit to fingers. So to start off the Viking knit, the first thing you need to do is make a little cap that goes on the top of this that holds the first row of loops in place. And before you do that, you have to decide whether what number of loops you want to go around. I normally do 5 on the ones with the bigger gauge of wire, but in this I will do 6. So you start off by holding one end of your wire, and then around your first two fingers, you wrap it the number of loops you want. So 5, 6, and back down. Slide it off your fingers, keeping it somewhat organized still, as much as possible. Then you just line them all up, and you give it a bit of a pinch. So you have almost a peanut shape. Then you take the ends, and you wrap them around the pinched section. Doesn't have to be too neat, just has to be remain smaller than the size of the hole you want to put it through in the draw plate in the end. So just like that. Then you take the pieces, you take the loops, and you pull them out so you have almost a flower petal design. Almost a little flower. Then you take it to whichever stick you're using and just hold it over it and bend them down so that it's like almost like a little octopus sitting on the top of the stick. Then you take one of your lengths of wire and stick it through the little loop, bring it up around the top stalk, and wrap it basically where the other wire was wrapped, so that you have this going on. And your wire should be pointing out on an angle here. You put it on top of the stick, you hold it, and then you take the end and go back towards where it's coming through. Here, you go underneath these two to form a loop where those two cross. And then you just continue around, pulling fairly tight, but not so much that it pulls way down on these. And so loop around the cross. And then loop around the cross. And just keep going until you get back around to the beginning. So once you're at the first one again, you may need to pull down on the wire and sort of just push it out of the way a little bit, so that you're able to get inside of this, so that you're actually going to go the part of where your little loop crosses. Let's see if it'll focus on that. The part where your little loop crosses, you're going to want to go through there and pull around, so you now have 2 rows. And you continue doing that. Okay, so a bit better of an angle here. So through the cross of the loop, and pull. through the cross of the loop and pull. And sometimes the spaces between the rows of loops will get smaller or wider, and you can sort of adjust how that goes as you do it, just by pulling more in one direction or just leaving it, and it'll eventually drift back over. You don't have to worry too much about it being 100%, because when it gets put through the drop plate it tends to even out. It's just things are really wonky. They either need to be sorted or the piece might not work out. You do want to get fairly even size loops, because that's one thing that doesn't. If there's that's one thing that doesn't change too much. If there's a huge difference in the size of the loops. Okay, I think I'm going to speed ahead until I have until I'm ready to splice. I guess that's a good place to end it so that it doesn't end up being too long. I'm posting the second part of this tutorial at the same time, so I will post the link in the description. Thank you.